over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. We'll have wall-to-wall Super Bowl 53 coverage, including Danny Borges' power ratings next week. He's talking to an East Coast sportsbook director, so we'll get some thoughts on what they're looking at there in that regard. We'll also have daily college basketball picks from Kyle Hunter. A lot of prop betting stuff for the Super Bowl. Daily NBA, NHL, college basketball. You name it, we've got it over at BangTheBook.com. And, of course, don't forget that this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. Sign up at DSI using that promo code BTB and the number 200. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We'll start with Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
It's going great. How's everything over there in Cleveland?
Everything's great. It is what it is here in the month of January. And, maybe next year, I don't know, maybe we'll be talking about the Browns here in the Super Bowl with all the hype that they're getting. But speaking of the Super Bowl 53, 2.5, pretty much the market-wide number. South Point temporarily moved to 3, came off of that very quickly. What are you seeing here with the early movement or maybe lack thereof with the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I believe I saw some figures, and granted, there's not a lot of money in these, but it was look-ahead lines, and it was roughly pick 'em when the Rams are going to play the Patriots. When the line originally came out, I grabbed the Patriots to pick 'em. I knew it probably wasn't going to last, and I wanted to set myself up for later. It has been constant Patriot money, and you kind of thought that it was going to go that way because if you take a look at the Super Bowl, you've got a team that's been there, done that. They're there every year, it seems to be, and they've had success in the Super Bowl. And then you got another team who hasn't been there in a while. They got a young coach, a young quarterback, and so you kind of knew after the games last week that some money was going to come in on New England, and part of that had to do, I think, originally was because the Rams, in my opinion, shouldn't be there. There's nothing that's going to change it. It was a bad call, and that's what it is. But I don't know if it's some spite bets or what it was, but it's strange to me because at this point, I really don't have any interest in watching the Super Bowl because you've got a team in the Rams that I don't think should be there, and you've got a team in the Patriots that I'm tired of seeing there. This was probably the least interesting matchup for the Super Bowl for myself, although the sports books out here seem to love it because we're close to L.A. and you've got the betting here in Nevada, and the New England's either one of those teams that you either love or you hate, and that always brings a lot of action to the table. But you mentioned the 3 hitting at South Point, and South Point, along with the Westgate, at least in my opinion, are the 2 sharpest books out here in Nevada. And if they're willing to go to 3 this early, and they did take a major hit from the wise guys because of that, but they knew about what they were doing. It wouldn't surprise me if this game goes to 3 later on before the game kicks off. So if you're holding out for some Rams plus 3, I think you're going to eventually get it.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case here. And, like you said, it's a ploy to balance action. They knew that once they went to 3, they were getting that respected money. Come back down to 2.5 if you have to. Maybe hang around 3 a little bit more if you want to. I think 3 was up for 17 minutes I saw on Twitter yesterday over there at the South Point. But, hey, this is what, quite frankly, I don't want to turn this into a discussion of the industry, although we very well could. This is what a sports book should do. You throw a line out there, see where the sharp guys bite, and then use that information to your advantage. So, like you said, going to 3 this early in the process, a very calculated decision, knew exactly what they were doing, gives them an idea of what to expect down the line.
Definitely does. And a lot of the sports books will keep a line. They won't move it. They're just looking to collect some of the juice from the getting the correct number on each side, which doesn't happen very often. The ones that really do make money are the ones that put the line out there. They have some opinion in it. I know Nick Bogdanovich, not really as much at William Hill, but when he's worked at some other places around town, he's definitely had an opinion in it. And I really trust Nick's opinion. He's one of the best sports book managers out there. He's been in some contests, and he's done very well. In fact, he went up against me in one of the contests. Might have been 2 years in a row, beat me both times. So I highly respect his opinion. There's other guys out there that are basically there as a manager for the book and just not putting much opinion in the line, just trying to even the score on each side. They're not going to bring in as much money as somebody who has an opinion. So hats off to anybody who has an opinion, and South Point especially, because they've got some guys over there that have been booking for years, and I highly respect their group over there. And as I pointed out, South Point and the Westgate are the two that take the biggest bets, and they're the two, at least in my opinion, that are the hardest to beat. And that's a good combination for those guys. They'll take some money, and they know they're going to win more than they lose when they put those lines on a little bit of a pedestal one way or the other to try to get people to take those bets in.
Something that's really interesting to me here about Super Bowl 53, this is the first Super Bowl in which we've got legalized wagering outside of Nevada. So you've got all the books up in the Northeast and on the East Coast, and then, obviously down in Mississippi as well, where if the Saints had been in this game, things could be a little bit different. But that's a really fascinating dynamic to me here. And I want to get your thoughts on this as somebody who's been in the industry for a very long time. This is an interesting, dynamic for the operators. So you've got William Hill, who's national. You've got DraftKings and FanDuel, who are really only up in the Northeast. I think it's fun to watch how that plays out, where you've got that L.A. crowd that you mentioned out in Vegas. You've got this East Coast crowd now that, everybody knows what New England has done, love them or hate them. They're going to take money on the Eastern Seaboard. That's really intriguing to me about this Super Bowl.
Yeah, it definitely is. And hopefully, eventually, years down the road, it'll be like it used to be, where you had local bookies everywhere, and you can call your friend in Boston and say, hey, what's your guy got? And he'll have New England at -4.5, and then you call your friend in New York and say they're playing the Jets, and the Jets guy will have a different number. He'll have 2.5 or 3. And I know a lot of guys that set up in all those cities with bookies, and they were able to get some nice middles. But that was probably 20 years ago or so. But it would be nice if they had it and they only took the action that they had and moved the lines off the action that they had, as opposed to being worried about getting middled and people using them that way. But that was my hope originally when they had. We're talking about legalizing gambling across the country. I was hoping to be able to get a point better in some places as opposed to others. But we probably won't get that. But it's interesting because, as you mentioned, most of the new states that have opened up are all over there on the East Coast, your Pennsylvanias, your New Jerseys, and talk about New York, although I don't think they have it yet. But a lot of them are in that general area of the Northeast. And we've got the Rams out here, which is really close to Las Vegas. LA's like 6 hours away by car. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
All right, so let's talk props. I think props, as I've talked about already this week, and as we'll continue to talk about on the show, I think props are the way to go for the Super Bowl. The line is tight. We've had a lot of close Super Bowls here recently. We've had a lot of back and forth. So live betting a good idea as well. You could probably arbitrage this game live and do a pretty good job with that. But Bryan, I think the most important point to make here about props today, some books have 800 some odd props in the offshore market. Maybe we'll have over 1,000 this year. Who knows? I know there are some things offshore that can be done that can't be done in Vegas, some of the entertainment props and things of that sort. But even at a book that's not offering a ton of prop selections, you're probably talking 300 or 400 prop offerings. So a lot of chance for paralysis here with so much to look at. How do you start to organize your prop betting thoughts?
Yeah, it's different now, at least the way I go about it, than I used to. Basically, back then, I would handicap the games based on what has been done all season long. For example, I would take a look at how many passes a certain receiver had caught all season long, and take out. I basically wanted to use the mean in that regard, and then go from that point. And then I would do like the last 4 games or the last month of the season, compare that, see if anything has changed. And then I would run around town and spend hours upon hours about betting over 3.5 catches for this guy at -110 at one point, and under 4 catches at -120 at another, whatever, and looking for that middle, and that's how I went about and did it. And then you do that with about 200 other props. So it's a really hard way to make an easy living, as they say. That was when I was younger and in better shape, and I could run around and do that for 2 weeks straight, and it paid off. Then it got to the point where I just realized, I said, now I need to do something a little bit different. And I would, instead of using the 2 weeks or whatever it would take me, because I don't have the computer ability to do everything I did by hand. I'm an old school guy. I've always done it that way. Was just knowing what the places had and just try the middle from that. Just if one guy had over 2.5 and another guy had under 3 and you can get a decent number, you just bet that blindly without doing any of the handicapping. A little bit different for me now. Now that we've gotten so much advanced stats, there's plenty of sites out there where, in fact, Warren Sharp, I'm a huge fan of Warren Sharp. He's got that book he puts out every year. He's got an excellent website, and he's also a great person to follow on Twitter. And, he will put out that this team is very good, and, they have so much success running the football in this sort of personnel they use, where the other team can't stop this type of personnel. And I saw something the other day, I don't know if it was for him or for somebody else, but it talked about how the Rams put so much pressure on the quarterback from the middle as opposed from the ends. And they went over Tom Brady's quarterback rating when he gets pressure up the middle as opposed to around the ends. And he's much worse when he gets the pressure up the middle than he does off the ends, which is all this stuff is great. The only problem is certain teams are really into analytics, like the Patriots, as you would expect. They were one of the first to get into analytics. So if you see analytics that meet the New England narrative, you can pretty much know that the Patriots are going to use that information for their own benefit. Problem is, you've got other teams like the Saints last week that in certain personnel they run the ball so much better, in other personnel they pass so much better, and they didn't use any of that in the game. They should have easily won that game against the Rams, and if they'd have just had somebody that they used for analytics, and they didn't do it. So just having the information does not mean the teams are going to use it. But with New England being in there, I'm very confident that they are going to use it, because if you've watched Belichick, he changes up his game plans each and every week. One week he'll be running the football like crazy. The next minute he uses the short passing game. So, it's something that if you can base your props on New England and just going off of what the tendencies are, where they could take advantage, what they're best at, I think that's where you go and you make your handicapping this year for the Super Bowl and put most of your bets on the Patriots, either over or under or whatever. And just keep in mind that that's the way that New England's going to play it. The Rams don't do that to the same extent, if they do it at all. So I'm doing it a little bit different this year, and I'm looking to play the Patriots in that. And as with every season, if you're looking to play overs, play them early. If you're looking to play unders, play them late for the most part. A lot of people like to bet the overs in the Super Bowl. They like to see a lot of action, and we've got us a high line here. So if you're looking to play a certain receiver over, but get them early. And if you're looking to play a certain prop under, get it late.
Well, and that's why we talk so much about using the prop betting market, because there's only so high of a level of efficiency that it can have, because the odds makers have to worry about so many different things. A lot of times they'll put up these numbers based on the season average that you mentioned, or maybe the last 4 game average, something like that. But we have so much advanced data out there now that those are things that the books they don't have time to do it. The odds makers don't have time to do that with the props. The risk managers may be a little bit more aggressive if they pick up on something, but they're also trying to move around lines on 800 different props. So use all of that research and information to your advantage. And also, too, think about the game flow. Think about how you expect this game to go. I've seen the Pro Football Focus guys talking about it. We've talked about it on the show here already this week. Bill Belichick always takes away something. Whatever you think that something is here in the Super Bowl, is it Robert Woods? Is it Brandon Cooks? Is it C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley? Whatever you think that something is, you go out there and you bet on Belichick to take that away. And if Belichick takes that away, something else has to make yardage. Something else has to be productive. So then you play the overs with that. So there's so much that goes into the prop market that, again, I just think it is absolutely the way to go. It's one of my favorite things in this business to talk about.
Yeah, and just from last week, I heard a podcast about a guy who used to be in the front office, used to be associated with the Patriots. I believe he's a national broadcaster now, but he's very good friends with Bill Belichick. And they asked him what Bill was going to do. And he says, well, first off, the first time they played, Kansas City was getting a lot of long passes. He said he's going to put his defensive backs back there, and he's not going to let anything go over their heads. And Kansas City did not have that success throwing the ball downfield that they had in the first game. And he says, and the second thing he's going to do is he's going to take away your go-to receiver, which is going to be Kelsey. So I bet Kelsey under, and he didn't do hardly anything the entire game. Easy money, because you know what they're planning on doing. You know the game. If you could tell me the actual game plan the team is going to use, you can make a ton of money betting the props. Belichick's done this so long that you know what his tendencies are. And that's why I'm concentrating on the Patriots props in this game, because there's enough times that we've looked at this and followed the way he goes. It's so many coaches will say, and it's not just in football, it's in other sports too, they'll say, we do what we do best, let the other team try to stop us, instead of saying, okay, we need to adjust a little bit to take away their strengths. And that's what the Patriots do. If you look at the personnel on the Patriots, you look at the year-to-date stats on the Patriots never look to be like an elite team, but yet they're in the Super Bowl virtually every year. So you have to look past the stats and realize that this is a team who plays to take away the strengths of the opposition. And if you look at the Patriots that way, you basically have a very good opinion on what the Patriots are going to do for that game. And because this game has so many props as opposed to a normal football game where you've got 10 or 20 on some of the major websites, that's the way to attack this. And I fully endorse breaking down the way this game is going to come out, because that's what I'm planning on doing.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look back at last year's Super Bowl, I imagine a lot of people are sitting there going, well, what did Bill Belichick take away last year? In Super Bowl 52, Eagles rolled up 538 yards, 41 points in that game. But the difference to me, and I don't know, maybe Jared Goff does have this attribute to his game. Maybe I just haven't seen it yet. Nick Foles is one of the best improvisers at the position that we've seen in the NFL over the last few years. He is a guy that, when things break down, he will make these throws off his back foot, move the pocket around, whatever he's got to do. And there's only so long you can cover somebody. I mean, somebody's going to get open at some point if the pass rush doesn't get there and you're just chasing guys around in the secondary. I don't know if Jared Goff has that attribute, which is something that does worry me a little bit about the Rams side in this game. But, if you're sitting there kind of wondering, well, Belichick didn't take anything away last year, maybe he did, but maybe it was just a thing where the pass rush couldn't get there. You can only cover a guy for so long. Zach Ertz, in a game with 513 yards, had 7 catches for 67 yards. Maybe he is the guy that Belichick took away. So, again, there's just so much that goes into this handicap. One thing I can tell you, and we'll talk a lot more about individual props that we like next week, Corey Littleton over tackles for the Rams is going to be my biggest prop bet, because no matter what the Patriots do, if they throw it to James White, Littleton's probably going to be spying him. If they run it with Sony Michel, James White, Rex Burkhead, Littleton's the best run stopper at the second level for the Rams. Whatever New England does, I think Littleton's all over the field. So these are the types of things that you want to think about here with the Super Bowl. And if you want to bet side total money line, go ahead. But props are where it's at in my mind.
Yeah. The thing with the money line is, because the line is short, we're not going to have that same advantage that we normally do of finding a cheap money line on the favorite and then taking the points with the dog. Obviously, with it less than 3, it's not probably the best thing to look at anyway. But, yeah, you mentioned Foles. Foles is one of those guys, if you look at his stats, not overwhelming, but the guy is very smart when it comes to adjustments. And there's certain quarterbacks that just don't have that ability. You watch a guy at the quarterback position, just watching the games last week, and the guy's getting up to the line and auto-bowling and changing the play. And then I definitely like to watch that when that happens and to see what kind of success they have. And it seemed like every time Brady went to the line and changed the play, they had a positive gain on that play. Instead of getting 3 yards on a run, they get 4 or 5 yards on a run. So that tells me not only is he reading the defense correctly, they're actually doing it better than you're always looking for your success rate in football, and they've had many successful plays by just going up and being there long enough. And as you mentioned with golf, he doesn't have that ability yet because he's so much younger than Brady, and he's got so many talented skill position players. He doesn't need to do that. They may not have a successful play for 1 or 2 in a row, and then all of a sudden he gets one of the best running backs in football. Todd Gurley runs for 12 yards. So I think that's a reason why a lot of the money has come in on New England early is because of that matchup of the quarterbacks, and I'd much rather trust the veteran in Brady than I would the younger quarterback in golf. But if it gets to 3 points, 3 points is the key number in the NFL, and that's where you're going to get some buyback. So that's one of the reasons I think we will see 3 by the end of the time.
Well, we'll definitely expand on this some more with some more prop bets that we're looking at, and obviously some more thoughts on the line next week with Bryan. But, Bryan, I do want to talk college basketball for a few minutes here. I know it's not a sport that you do a ton with, a lot of different teams. You get a late start because you're so busy with college football and the NFL. But one thing that I did notice here on Twitter, and you can follow Bryan on Twitter @BLeonardSports, you've been throwing out some second-half plays here. And, obviously can't sell those with the short lead time, and they're very hard to track, but what is it about second half plays that you're kind of finding some success with here?
Well, I've spoken to a lot of guys who bet second halves for a living, and they do very well on them. And I've read enough. I read as many sports betting books that I can from both sports bettors and from lines makers. If you follow like Matchbook or Pinnacle on Twitter, they're always very welcome with trying to give you good information. A lot of people have always said, why would a sportsbook manager or a sportsbook employee want to help you make money? Well, the truth of the matter is a lot of people are going to quit gambling if they don't win some of the time. What you want to do is make it so people win enough to come back again. If you're playing a slot machine and you never hit, you're going to quit playing slot machines. You got to entice people and be able to hit that once in a while. And it makes a lot of sense for the sports books to give you some positive information, because not only will that information help you, it'll keep you in the game longer, and that's what they want. They want people. They feel you're eventually going to lose that money anyway, so they want to keep you the game longer, so that way you'll re-up your account and the whole bit. And what I have learned is the falsity, I guess that's a word, of the line coming back to the original line. A lot of people will look at a game, let's say the Lions pick them, and a team is up by 10 at the half, and they say, well, chances are it's going to go back to what the original line was and pick them in the second half. Well, in reality, that's not the truth. Normally, when you get into a game like that, you're getting an advantage by playing the team that is actually up at the half because they prepared more before the game's being played, they had their better practices, they were better coached in that game, and they come out, and if you're able to watch how the game's being played or look at the stats on how that game is being played, you see that team is basically just more prepared. So a lot of people just look at that first half line. They say, well, originally this game was a pick'em, and now I'm down 10, and I'm only have to give up 5 at the half. And so now I'm looking at I'm getting the 5 points off of the original, when in reality you're losing the 5 points off the second half. So what I try to do is if a team gets off to a really good start in the first half, I look for that to continue. And if a team gets off to a bad start in the first half, I look to fade that. And I only do it during conference action. I don't do it earlier in the season because, especially in college basketball, coaches are trying to get their rotations going. They're trying to see what this guy could do. I talked about last week, they're not as concerned about wins and losses. They're trying to get everything set up for conference action. And when you're in conference action, you've already got your rotation set, and you're all set on that. So if a team is down, 17 points in a game where it should have been a pick'em, that team, chances of them coming back and making a game of it, at least to me, are pretty remote. And most people would look at that and they would just think the opposite. They would think that, well, they're just as good as the other team. They're going to make a comeback here. And the numbers have shown that, no, you're better off taking the team that's playing very well in that situation. That it's I think we're 10-9 or 9-8. Bad run the last few days on that, but overall, it'll make you money in the long run, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grind out some additional profit for our clients that can afford to pay for the general selections off the site, and this way it keeps them active and gets people to look at the games a little bit different way than they traditionally would.
So from a market standpoint, are you firing right when those second halves open, or do you kind of give it time to see what direction the line's going to go?
No, it's because, as you mentioned earlier, the shortness of time. As soon as I see that first line come out, I hit it. And then as soon as I get my bet in, I send it out to everybody who's following me on Twitter. If you wait longer to look for a better line, you're never going to get a chance to get this out to your clients. And, they've got to look. If they've got more than one out, it takes them time to get into it too. And the half times are only so long. And so I let them have the information first. If they want to wait and look for the best line, they're more than welcome to it, and I would suggest that as long as they've got plenty of time to get it in. I've got other games I'm looking at too, so I'm just hitting that first number once it comes out. And normally it doesn't move more than half a point anyway, sometimes a point. But my feeling is if I'm on the right side of that game, I'm going to be getting the best number off the original bet. So I just stick with that.
Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now, Bryan?
A little bit of change on the videos this week. Obviously, we talk football all the time, talk about theory and basketball and other sport handicapping. We're actually going to start breaking down the games. And the reason why we don't break down individual games for the NBA and college for the most part is we tape on Wednesday, and by the time we get the videos up, we want to have enough time for them to be able to be seen. By the time we get them up tonight, chances are the games may be off by then. So we're usually looking on the weekend, so we're looking at Friday and Saturday. And at that point, it's tougher to make a decision right now because, first off, we don't know what the line's going to be. We could guess what the line is going to be, but teams usually play a game in between. So it's a little bit harder for us to handicap basketball that far out. And because you read articles on basketball, you know exactly what we're talking about. You do your weekly articles on the site. So it is a little bit – he's not getting complete information, but we try to do as best as we can. And today we're going to start breaking down some NBA and college basketball for the weekend. So we should have – I believe they've got like 14 videos going up today. So look forward to doing that, and that's at WedgerTalk.tv. And, looking forward to a week here where I can take away from some football and work on some of the things I'm looking at for the props. And hopefully people can get those out early. I know this Westgate out here in Vegas is usually the first to put them out, and they put them out on Thursday. Now others leak them out, some general ones, how many times or consecutive scores and punts and things like that. But your player props and things like that usually come out Thursday night at the Westgate, and I'll probably be there. If you've never been to one of these where an opening line and you live in Las Vegas, make your way down to the Westgate. Every sports bettor that I know is going to be down there. Guys that you will recognize, guys who bet for a living. Most of your television crews are down there filming people. So it's a little bit different than a normal day at the sports book. So Thursday afternoon, Thursday night is when they'll be doing it. So it's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of people. So it's something that I would do as a general bettor in Vegas if you didn't have any plans for Thursday.
Well, you can follow Bryan on Twitter at BLeonardSports. Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at WagerTalk.com. Appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Best of luck to everyone.